إنك على كل شيء قدير. So if you can remind ourselves of the problem that we mentioned last week, which was what? Can I move this way? Yeah, just talk.
No, we can't do that.
Can't do this. Sorry.
Well,
sorry.
okay, that's fine. No.
My apologies. I'm just talking to you before now. So if you remind ourselves of the problem we had last week, which is what? Lost in translation is so many, you can't translate the volume sound, right?
Camera.
What about it?
Is the camera good?
Yeah, good.
Is when we're trying to translate the Quran, which is a linguistic miracle, we lose a lot of graphics, so to speak, right? We're taking a picture of a picture that we're trying to do here, and this is what is lost, right? And so we are trying to bridge that gap to some extent by looking at some of the technical mechanics that are used in the Quran, so that we can try and bridge that gap and make sure we don't lose the whole content, right? So we have number one, a language gap. I don't understand Arabic. And number two, a taste gap, the knack of something. And subhanAllah, today when I was just preparing, I was reading the Dala'il al-I'jaz by Baqarah al-Jurjani, who we mentioned last week. And subhanAllah, he has a whole essay on this, where there are certain things that he's an Arab speaking to Arabs and saying, sometimes I can't explain things to you because you just don't get it. Like, you just don't have the knack. You're not somebody who is good at literature, so it's lost on you. Whereas again, if we go back to the Jahiliyyah, this place where Islam, where the Quran is revealed, well, we can't say everybody, but there is a tabi al-am, is a general take. The general feel is that people are very, very sensitive to language, are very, very sensitive to the subtleties of language, right? And it was very, very important. As Hassan ibn Thabit, he said, before in Jahiliyyah, he said, I do with my tongue that which I can't do with my sword. Right? It's more powerful, right? So this is a problem we mentioned. This applies to both Arabs and non-Arabs alike. So today we are going on to the world of the unknown, the world of the nakira, the indefinite. So again, boring terms that we had from last week. Why do we care about grammar? Because we are looking at a system, right? We spoke last week that like language is like music. You have a system. You need to know where those systems are in order to see how it's played around with. If you can't classify the systems, you can't separate do from re and mi, then you can't talk about the beautiful music. Similarly, if you can't talk about the difference between indefinite and indefinite, even though it's boring in grammar, you're losing the whole plot, right? So in English, we can say a cat, which means, right, or the cat, which means the specific known cat. We call that the definite article, right? People like from my generation, at school we didn't even study that, right? Who cares about it? It's not relevant, right? Our previous generation, you did this at school, the definite article, etc., right? And we have a cat, which means unknown, unspecified, indefinite. So we have the term definite, the, indefinite, a or some, right? Fine. However, what is useful, and we're going to see in today's lessons, is the rhetorical use, the eloquence that comes out when you shift from the definite to the indefinite. From the definite to the indefinite. So essentially, what is the indefinite is an unknown thing. Okay, big deal. But in what sense is that unknownness being used? Right, and that's why today's lesson is called the world of the unknown, because there's all sorts of things when we use something that is nakira, that is unknown, it has various different usages. Okay, so that's today's lesson, the world of the unknown. So in Arabic, sometimes I can use an indefinite. I say a, and I mean something that is too big or too great in number to be known. You can't know it. Why is it unknown? Because it's too amazing. It's too great. Or it could be unknown because it's too small or too few in number. It could be complete opposites. It could be too worthless, or it could be too amazing. Or it could be too general. Or, which is interesting, sometimes in Arabic, we use the indefinite to mean a specific type. Right, so I give examples of this when we're trying to understand the Quran and how things can be lost when we're trying to understand the Quran. So here's an example which really struck me as somebody starts studying the Deen and studying Arabic, where you get completely lost if you are not aware of these uses in Arabic, right? So you're familiar with this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ asked the Sahaba in his style of interacting, getting his audience to interact with him. He said, "Tadruna mal muflis?" Can you figure it out? Right? So it's important in Arabic. Adri doesn't mean no. Adri mean can you guess? Right? Right? Like the phrase in American, go figure. Right? That's called diraya. Could you figure out? Ma adraka min qari'a? What would make you figure that out? Right? Not just ma a'lamaka. What would make you know? Right? Shu darrani. Right? As they say in Levant, shu darrani. Right? How am I supposed to guess at that? How am I supposed to know? Right? So ma adri doesn't mean I don't know. It means how am I supposed to guess that? How am I supposed to know that? So atadruna man muflis. Can you guys guess what a bankrupt person is? قالوا المفلس فينا من لا درهم له ولا متاع. They said, yeah, of course, somebody who's bankrupt, they don't have any assets, there's no cash, right? So they're bankrupt. And the Prophet ﷺ said, إن المفلس من أمتي من يأتي يوم القيامة بصلاة وصيام وزكاة. This is the Bayt al-Qasid. This is the point I'm trying to point out. He says, the bankrupt person is a person who comes in Yawm al-Qiyamah with a prayer and a charity and a fast. And he has insulted so-and-so and defamed so-and-so and took the wealth of so-and-so and spilt the blood of so-and-so and beat up so-and-so, etc., etc., etc. So the hadith mentions what? He comes on Yawm al-Qiyamah, he's prayed how many times? Once. Okay, how many times has he given charity? Once. How many times has he fasted? Once. And he has insulted so-and-so and harmed people. So the hadith mentions that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, they will either take his good deeds, and if he doesn't have anything less, he will take their bad deeds and he'll be cast into the hellfire, and may Allah protect us all. Okay, so the key hadith about the importance of rights of other people, right? You can do whatever you want to yourself, and Allah will forgive you, inshallah ta'ala. But if you so much as break the end of the leg of a little ant once in your life, the ant will be asked in Yawm al-Qiyamah, would you forgive him or not? Right? Let alone other people. Right? So the rights of huquq al-ibad is a big deal. Right? So anyway, the question is, why is he bankrupt? Who can tell me why is he bankrupt? So what was his capital of good deeds? He prayed once, right? He fasted once, right? And then he says, and he did X, Y, and Z. So the logic is the person didn't do many good deeds and he harmed other people. So that's why he's bankrupt, right? Is that what the hadith means? What does hadith mean? Okay, so he's bankrupt because he didn't do good deeds. So it basically, on the basis that means that if he did lots of good deeds, he'd be okay. So you should be like the mafia, right? If you want to kill somebody, donate to the church, mashallah, $1 million, and then you can get away with it, right? And then you won't be bankrupt. So it's the opposite of what it means. So I read it, a prayer. He prayed once, right? That's what I understand. It's the opposite. It means salatin, mashallah, he prayed a lot. The guy was always in the front row. Mashallah, he was always in the front row. He gave zakat every single year. He was giving 1,000. He was giving 100,000 in zakat. Mashallah. So salatin doesn't mean one prayer. It means a lot of prayers. So the message of the hadith is the opposite of what we read. The point is, mashallah, in your head you thought you could do at-tahayyul ala Allah. You thought you could do what? Trick Allah by doing lots of good deeds. You could just bribe Allah by going on Hajj and building mosques and building orphanages. You get the whole time you're wronging other people. You can't do that because you're going to be bankrupt. Even if you've done tons of prayers and tons of charity and tons of fasts, but, notice even the word but is translated. Before it was and. Now it's but. You change the meaning. Right? He insulted so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. You wronged other people. So now you're bankrupt. Right? So the message is you're a millionaire in terms of you and Allah. But those little things, those things that added up, are going to bankrupt you. So opposite. Right? So notice how we're going to get completely lost if we don't know what the indefinite means. And if we read it, prayer. Right? Right? And so, subhanAllah, I remember when I was beginning my studies studying Nahu, Sheikh Ali Hani, who inshallah I'll talk about one day. Sheikh Ali Hani, he said, what's the point of Nahu? Diqqatul fahm. Actually understanding what's being said. Diqqatul fahm. Right? And so here we completely misunderstood the hadith. And again, Google the hadith, you're going to find it, and it doesn't really make sense. You will find translations of it, doesn't really make sense, right? And that's a problem, right? And that's why Sibawayh, who knows the story of Sibawayh, how he started his studies of Arabic? He's reading hadith with a hadith scholar, and he made mistake after mistake and mistake. He says, you don't even know Arabic, go and study Arabic before you do hadith, right? And so he went and studied, and mashallah, he became Sibawayh. So here we can see a very good example of that. It doesn't make sense. Like the hadith does not make sense. If you don't understand the tankir, the indefinite, you don't understand what's going on. It's lost completely. And so it could be that it's too big or too great to be known. So the point is, why do you say salatin? It is unknown. أي صلاة غير معروفة لأنها فوق العد. Right? You can't count it. Mashallah, he prayed so much, it's indefinite, it's unknown. So the indefiniteness comes from the fact that what? We don't even know how many prayers. Right? So we're going to see this countless times in the Quran. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن في خلق السماوات والأرض لآيات. What does it mean? It means signs. Ayatin means signs. But does it say the signs, al-ayat? Or does it say ayatin, signs? It says ayatin. What does ayatin mean? It says in the heavens and the earth there are ayatin for people of pure and sound intellect. لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Someone who is a lub. Right? I think it was one of the Prophet's uncles was getting hit by his auntie, by the Prophet's aunt. So the big sister was hitting the little sister. And they said, mashallah, you're looking after your little brother, but why do you hit him so much? She says, أَضْرِبْهُ كَيْ يَلَبْ وَيَقُودُ الْجَيْشْ ذَا الْجَلَبْ. I'm hitting him so that he can have a lub, he can be smart, right? Military education, right? He's going to be smart. وَيَقُودُ الْجَيْشْ ذَا الْجَلَبْ. And he'll be able to lead an army of crying voices. And he's making him strong, right? So that's what the word lub is. Like he's got intellect, someone who's labib, who's got a smart. So that's the word lub. Right? We're also talking about lub manga, which is the pulp, the real deal. You want to eat the skin, or do you want to eat the real deal? Right? That's somebody who has the real deal heart. Right? This person is called ulul albab. Right? So it says signs. What does it actually mean? Countless signs. La ayatin. It means fawq al-ad. Right? Countless signs. So again, there's a word that's lost in the translation because you don't understand that indefinite means a lot. That's what it means here. It means a lot of these things. So indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, there are countless signs for those of pure and sound intellects. Okay, so it could be too big or too great to number. Another example. قَوْلٌ مَعْرُوفٌ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ خَيْرٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ يَتْبَعُهَا أَذَى. Translation. Saying nice words and forgiving is better than giving charity that is used as a means of harm to others. Right? I'm paraphrasing here. Right? So that's an acceptable translation. Qawlun ma'rufun, saying something nice, right? Right? Nice, good try, but no. Right? What do Muslims say? No mansaf. I don't know what we say. No cigar. Wait, we don't do cigars. Right? So something else, right? Nice try, but no cigar. So what does it say? Actually, it's saying just a few words. Qawlun ma'rufun, just a little bit. The tankir is for a little bit, and the smallest act of forgiveness. So you just said Assalamu alaikum to somebody once. You didn't even look at him. And you forgave somebody parked in your place, whatever, you didn't call the police. Right? You're a grumpy guy, you don't care, you don't talk to anybody, but somebody took something of you, abused you somehow, you just didn't look, you overlooked it. Khayru min sadaqatin, mashallah, you've donated $1 million this year to the mosque, and you're on Imad's case every single day. Imad, can you do this, can you do that, can you do this, can you do that? Remember when I donated this? Remember, it's like, I prefer if you didn't do that. Build your own mosque, bro. Right? Or you own these people's back the whole time, right? Which is called al-man, right? Al-man is when you come to somebody and say, hey, I did this and did this and did this, and you're harming the person, that is haram, right? لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. Do not annul the generosity that you did give to other people by reminding them and trying to, تحملهم جميلا, as they say in Arabic, right? You're trying to say, hey, I've done this to you, I've done that to you, you've got to do this to me, which is haram. So it doesn't say saying nice words. It says just a few nice words. And the smallest act of forgiveness is better than a whole lot of charity that is used as a means to harm a lot. Quite a different translation, right? Again, if we're not aware of the tankir, completely lost the meaning there. Okay, so it could be too small. So there we have two different parts of the verse. One is too much, one is too little. Another example where the Sahaba themselves misunderstood the Tankir. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُم بِظُلْمٍ. Those who have believed, right? وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُم, did not cover over their iman بِظُلْمٍ, with a wrongdoing, right? So a translation, or not a bad translation, an acceptable translation is those about whom faith has become a fact. We'll talk about this later on, right? Why I don't translate it as those who believe or those who believed, right? It's the past tense, right? They've been sealed on their hearts, right? That they are those about whom faith has become a fact and have never marred, lam yalbisu, never marred their faith with any wrongdoing. So this is a valid interpretation in principle, as we're going to see. Ma ra'aytu ahadan doesn't mean I didn't see one person. It means I didn't see anyone, right? Ma ja'a rajulun doesn't mean a man didn't come. It says no man came, not any man. So they understood, okay, those who have, they're believers, mashallah, and they never wronged themselves at all. They never did a single haram thing in their life, mashallah. It is those on that high station alone who will have the true and ultimate safety, and it is they alone who are the increasers in guidance. And so here, as we find in Sahih Bukhari, the Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, and who on earth among us have never wronged himself? Right? If anybody here put their hand up, mashallah, I've never done a single thing haram in your life, please put your hand up, right? You can lead the prayer. In fact, you can teach a lesson. And so the Prophet ﷺ explained that's not what it means, right? Rather, so they understood it to be too general. Something is so general that it's unknown, right? It becomes so general, so widespread, it's unknown. So that you couldn't limit it, so it's unknown. That's not the case. Rather, it meant a particularly gross wrongdoing. A ظُلْمٍ خَاصٍ or ظُلْمٍ عَظِيمٍ وَهُوَ الشِّرْك. Right? And that's what shirk. So the Prophet ﷺ explained it doesn't mean that. It meant actually shirk. They didn't wrong their iman by committing shirk. Right? So here, this is a clear example where the Prophet ﷺ is telling us, by the way, the indefinite doesn't mean this, it means this. Right? It is those on that high station, أُولَٰئِكَ, those people over there on that high station, alone who will have al-amn, the true and ultimate safety, and it is they alone who are increasers in guidance, and muhtadun. Right? We mentioned last week the difference between muhtadun and hudu. Right? Hudu meant those who are guided, or they were guided. It doesn't say hudu, they were guided. It says they are muhtadun, they are people who receive an increase in guidance. It's different. Okay? So something can be what? Something can be too great to be what? To be too great, or it could arguably be too amazing. A similar kind of thing. Too great in number or too great in worth. Right? And too great in worth could be positively, i.e. that's a really amazing thing, or terrible, it's really, really bad. Right? So the point is it's excess, there's a sense of excess there. Or it could be indefinite because it's worthless. It's unknown because you can't even see it. Right? So example of that, وَحَمَّلْنَاهُ عَلَى ذَاتِ أَلْوَاحٍ وَدُسُرٍ. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focuses on the weakness and the pettiness of this thing and how these people are being tossed from side to side in this complete, I wouldn't say tempestuous, it is a tempest, right? It is a storm. And they're only being saved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are, these people, ala dhati alwahin wa dusur. We bore him on something that had planks and tree nails. Right? Tree nails are pieces of wood that use as nails. Right? So something hammered in like that. So is this thing going to survive in the water? No. Okay, so why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say the ship that was made out of X, Y, and Z? Because if you said the ship, at least you have a picture in your head. But it says a mere thing that has bits of planks in it. So when you say a mere thing, it has the sense that it's not much. It's not much, right? So we bore him on a mere thing that had a few planks and tree nails. How on earth was he supposed to survive in that? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was protecting him. And maybe Sheikh Hassan is it فَإِنَّكَ بِأَعْيُنِنَا Does it come after that?
Yeah.
Right? So you see the context, you see the whole context, that تجري بأعيننا, right? This thing is flowing where? Right in Allah's eyes the whole time. So this thing, this a little piece of paper in this huge storm, is protected because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So see the context shows the pettiness, right? How do you know what the indefinite means? You have to look at the context. You have to look at the context, right?
Yes.
And that's how it works, right? So it's a bit difficult. And so here we can see that the indefinite is used, a mere thing. Where did you get the word mere from? How did you pull that out? Oh, because I know Arabic. I know that the tankir can be for tahqir. The indefinite can be used to show something's petty, right? And so this shows us, zooms in on what? The sympathy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to get you to have for the hero of the story. That they are weak and they're frail. And then what? The divine concern that we see there. Right? And that there's such a frail situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one protecting them. So again, if we just say a thing, it's not the same, but it's a mere thing. Right? Something weak that needs help. Another example of the indefinite, which shows something is pathetic and worthless. فَأَخْرَجَ لَهُمْ عِجْلًا جَسَدًا لَهُ خُوَارٍ. Right? Allah subhanahu mentions that the Samuri, what did he do? He brought out a calf for them, a body that made a low. Okay, so how should we really translate it? A body. What's the context? Right? The context is that this is something stupid. They used to worship Allah, and now they worship some dumb animal. It's not even alive. Right? So he brought out for them a calf for them, a mere lifeless body. So the word a mere comes from what? Idea that it's for tahqir, it's like pathetic. A mere. Lifeless comes from the word that jasad is different to the word jism. So jasad has the sense in Arabic of something that doesn't have a life. It's not alive anyway. Right? Jism. And so it's a mere lifeless body that makes a dumb lowing sound. Where did I get the word dumb lowing sound? Because it's for lahu khuwar. It has some indefinite. It's a pathetic, stupid little sound. Right? It's like a little Chinese toy that you think you can start worshipping it just because it makes a sound. Right? Whereas the rhetoric was the theme. This is a worthless thing. Right? It's a worthless thing. It doesn't deserve to be. It doesn't deserve. One second, I'm just checking why can't people. Okay, 1 second. Just need to make sure everyone's muted when they come in. Okay, so a mere lifeless body that made a dumb lowing sound. Okay, right? So I don't like to swear, to use an oath, but the phrase in Arabic, billahi alayk, right? It's a beautiful phrase, right? You can't say it any other way. But you look at translations, how many times are we going to see this in the translation? You're not going to see it often. Right? You're going to go through 9, 10, 20 translations. You're often not going to see these words. A mere lifeless body. One of the difficulties is because you always have to keep paraphrasing and adding in things. So the question is, are you even translating? Right? Are you even translating? Or are you explaining? Right? But it's important that sometimes these words have to come out. Sometimes they have to come out. Otherwise, it's going to be a genuine difference. So when you come to something like this, right? Let's. Can you, Hassan? Can you remember the ayah for this? Where is it? Here. Do you know where this is? Here. You can Google it. I don't know if you know the ayah. That would be pretty good if you know the ayah number. But you can Google it. Look under 9 or 10 different translations of it. You're not going to find. It's going to come up time and time again, saying nice words. How do you say nice words in Arabic? Al-qawl al-ma'ruf. That's what you say. Al-qawl al-ma'ruf, which means say nice things. Right? Let's look it up, guys. So we've got the phone. Baqarah, what is it? 263? Right? Try and find a website that gives you different translations. Try and find one translation that's going to do that. Inshallah, all of them have that, and I'm wrong, inshallah, right? I hope I'm wrong, right? Imam Shafi'i is famous, he said, he never debated anybody, never argued with anybody, save that he prayed that the truth would become manifest on the tongue of his opponent. Right? I'm not trying to hear to boast them, I know and you don't. I'm trying to say there's a problem. There's a problem there, right? And often you're going to find, with few exceptions, that most of these translators, they're not specialists in Arabic. They didn't study. They didn't study. They didn't go to madrasa, they didn't do these things. MashaAllah, they have a PhD in Arabic, or they have a PhD in English, or whatever it is. The English is good and it's not bad. And they've read some tafsirs here, there, and everywhere, but there's major things that are missing. Right? Major things that are missing. So what was it? The Baqarah
263.
263. Did anybody find translations of it?
Translation.
263. So there's going to be Dr. Ghali, there's going to be Pickthall, there's going to be Yusuf Ali. And they're all going to say something like this. Saying nice words. Right? It doesn't say saying nice words. How would you translate that, right? Classic thing, if you're trying to learn Mandarin, right? Go to Google Translate, do English to Mandarin, and then translate it back into English and see if it makes any sense. So we'll do the same thing. Saying nice words. Translate into Arabic. Al-qawl al-ma'ruf. Translate it back into English. Saying nice words. Al-qawl al-ma'ruf. It doesn't say al-qawl al-ma'ruf. It says qawl al-ma'ruf. Right? There's a big difference. Right? Ta'ala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an al-abath. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is too great to do something pointless. Right? This is not some notes that somebody just copied in translating different languages. No, this is the word, the very words of Sayyidina Jibreel that we heard, that the Prophet heard. Right? This is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so this is literally lost in translation. Did you see anybody that translated like that? Kind speech. So kind speech, aslan, it's wrong because you're using the definite. Kind speech. In English you can say kind speech, the kind speech, or some kind speech. You have three things. Those three slots, they're going to go into two slots in Arabic. The is going to be L. Saying something nice is going to be L. A saying something nice is going to be, so at least has to be A saying something nice, which doesn't really make any sense. Jazakumullah khair, Mufti Taqi, aha. Mufti Taqi Uthmani, so who is he? Who knows who Mufti Taqi Uthmani is? Grand Mufti of Pakistan. Right? So why does he do that? Because he studied in madrasa. And in this quote-unquote backward madrasas, what do? They do balagha, they do sarf. Right? And in Indo-Pak, they do it wanos, as they say in Arabic, right? They do it, mashallah, they do a very good job of it. Right? And so somebody who, like himself, who's a talib mutafawwid, who's a very good student, who studies in the traditional madrasa, they do these things, and they know the differences, and it comes out. And also when he's translating, he's going to be looking at these, the classical tafasir, as opposed to somebody who just has a very kind of superficial understanding. It's going to be lost. Right? It's going to be lost. It's not just a, okay, you lost some of the eloquence. It's a mistranslation. Right? It's a mistranslation. Allahu A'lam. Okay, so we have examples there. So this is one thing that we have to do when we're reading the Quran. We have to go through, those of us who know Arabic, we have to go through with a fine-tooth comb, and every single time you see the word in indefinite, what is this? 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 What's going on? Right? Khair. So, okay, we did these examples. على ذات ألواح ودسر فأخرج عجلا له خوار. Right, a dumb lowing sound. It's too worthless, or it's too amazing. Right, comes so kitabun uhkimat, a book, or it's the book. ذلك الكتاب. We saw the word al-kitab used previously in the Quran. Here it's a book. Kitabun uhkimat ayatuhu thumma fussilat min ladun hakimin khabir. Well, how many hakimin khabirs are there? Right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says a book, or which book are you talking about? Whose verses have been carefully arranged and then explained by a wise and an all-aware being. Who is that? Allah. Okay, why didn't you say by Allah? This is what we mean, right? We're talking about, you have a structure, you could just say by Allah, or you could say by the wise and the all-aware. But you didn't. Why did you shift? Why did you change gear? Why did you do that? There's a particular reason. Why? Because it says, an amazing book whose verses have been carefully arranged and then explained by an awesome, wise, and all-aware being. So where did these words come from? The indefinite. As opposed to if you made it definite, if this is the book that you're all familiar with, we'll talk about next week with the definite, and that amazing person that you all know about, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a different message. Right? This, as it's in Arabic, لِكُلِّ مَقَامٍ مَقَالٍ. Right? In every single scenario you say a certain thing. So this is so if you just translated it as, I don't know what, from the wise and the all aware, or from Allah, you've missed the whole thing. Right? You missed the whole point. Another example, too amazing. أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. right? And it's worth noting, right, especially for people who are studying tafsir, that all of these points, where do they come up in tafsir? They usually come up in Baqarah. So if you want a tafsir that will pull out every single balagha point in the Quran, you're not going to find it. You're not going to find it. Every single subtle point. But what they're going to do is in Baqarah, they'll, for example, mention here various different things that, for example, that what's going on, and assume you understand the same discussion previously. Because even in a madrasa system, you can't afford to spend, do the Hashid Zada, for example, a huge volume, 9-volume tafsir in a curriculum. You can't do that. So what you'll do is, for example, Baqarah, and do Baqarah properly. So أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. Those over there are on a guidance from their Lord. Right? So again, it's not guidance from the Lord. That's a wrong translation. On guidance from the Lord, that's a wrong translation. It's on a guidance from Allah. I.e., those over there on that distinct and high station are firmly established on an indescribable guidance from their caring Lord. Right? So there's all sorts of points here we can't explain one by one, but what's the balagha of the ulaika? What's the point there? So ulaika ala hudan. Right? Why does it say all these different things? And again, you're going to find in the tafasir that they're going to mention various different types of isti'arat, hidden comparisons here that we don't have to go into now right now. But there's a big difference there. Those over there on that distinct and high station, mashallah, the believers, are firmly established on an indescribable guidance. And in reality, that is the case. Can you iman? The Prophet ﷺ's iman is always increasing. Will it ever stop? Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on day infinity, will the Prophet ﷺ's iman stop increasing? No. And so that is literally that. You could not express it. Okay, who knows who Allah is? You can say things about Allah, but you can't. Our level of appreciation of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is can only increase and increase and increase. Ila ma la nihaya. Ad infinitum. There's no limit to it. So it's literally you could not put a box around it. Right? So this is why Abu Sa'ud, he was the Shaykh al-Islam of the Ottoman Empire. Right? He used to receive fatwa in Ottoman Turkish and in Persian and in Arabic, and he would write back to them in Arabic or Persian or Ottoman Turkish. And sometimes it'd be written questions in poem form. He'd write back to them in poem form. Right? And so he's buried next to he's right next to Sayyidina Ayyub al-Ansari in Fatih in Istanbul, and the grave is written. They call him Busut, right? Busut, right? Abu Sa'ud. So he says, وَمَا فِيهِ مِنَ الْإِبْهَامِ الْمَفْهُومِ مِنَ التَّنْكِيرِ لِكَمَالِ تَفْخِيمِهِ كَأَنَّهُ قِيلَ عَلَى أَيِّ هُدًى لَا يُبْلَغْ كُنْهُ وَلَا يُقَادَرُ قَدَرُهُ. He says the intentional vagueness of the indefinite is used, typo here, is used to show its utter augustness. It is as if it was said, wow, what a guidance they're on. Its reality cannot be fathomed and its rank cannot be measured. That's what it means. As opposed to, they are on guidance. Right? There's a big difference. Right? We could phrase it in our parlance like that's some kind of next level guidance. That's some kind of crazy guidance, right? I don't know if you guys still use the word that's sick. Do you use that word now? Sick. That's a sick car, right?
Yeah.
Right, that was a sick khutbah, right? Right? But Allah. Okay, so it could be too amazing. There's countless scenarios like this. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. So why doesn't it say in the Quran, وَاتَّقُوا الْيَوْمَ الَّذِي تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ? What's the difference? Ward off the day upon which you'll be returned to Allah. So we all know there's a day that you'll return to Allah. Why doesn't it have definite? وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا, a day, as if you don't know it anymore. Yeah, because you can't understand it. It's too big for you to understand, right? You say, sorry to speak, khawd fil batin, right? Being English, we're like Monty Python. And so in Monty Python, the Holy Grail, they find that the scary white rabbit. If you know that, if anyone knows, right? So that everyone's like, okay, there's a white rabbit. Like, I mean, yeah, I can see it. There's a white rabbit. Yeah, and they're being told, no, you don't know what it's like, right? The scary white rabbit that you can't kill, right? Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, next week we're going to do sharh al-Faridiyya al-Matan, what is it? Matan on Monty Python, inshallah. Okay, so ward off a day you can't understand. There is something in there, you don't know what it is. As opposed to, by the way, inside there's a lion, he's so tall, he's this. At least you know what you're dealing with. You don't know what you're dealing with. There is something inside there, I don't know what it is. Right? So often in horror, to scare, this vagueness is there. Right? Why is the dark scary? Why are we scared from the dark? Because we don't know. Right? Because we don't know. Right? So ward off a day, i.e. ward off a terrifying day upon which you will be effortlessly returned to Allah. Why do I say effortlessly? Because it's the passive is being used. Right? So, you say, for example, Hassan's looking for his car, and I'm like, Alhamdulillah, Hassan, I drove to this place and drove this place, and I found it, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I got your car back for you. As opposed to, yeah, don't worry about it, your car will be returned tomorrow. Easy. You use the passive to show that no effort was used. It's easy. Turja'una effortlessly. It was done like that. As if there was no action done. It just happened like that. Right? So on a terrifying day. So it's too amazing or terrifying. So the point is, it's of a high rank. Could be positive and negative depending on the context. Right? Just like we say in English, right? He really thinks he's something. Right? Something big. Right? The big, you don't have to say that, but he thinks he's big. Right? But sometimes we can also say he thinks he's, right, the big thing. He's the next big thing. So the next big thing, that's something else. There's also praise or blame in it. It's in a different use. Right? خير. Or it could be too general. So وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا لَا تَجْزِي نَفْسٌ عَنْ نَفْسٍ شَيْئًا وَلَا يُقْبَلُ مِنْهَا شَفَاعَةٌ وَلَا يُؤْخَذُ مِنْهَا عَدْلٌ. Right? And ward off a day on which a soul will not be able to help a soul, a thing, and an intercession will not be accepted from it, and a ransom will not be accepted from it. Okay, that's indefinite. I translated it as it is. Wrong. It means ward off a terrible day on which not a single soul will be able to help any other soul at all, I should say, not a thing, but at all, in any ability, and no intercession will be accepted from it at all, and no ransom will be accepted from it at all. Right? That's the indefinite is being used. And this is quite normal in Arabic. In Arabic, generally you don't use the word any. In English, we have to say, I didn't see anything, I didn't do anything. In Arabic, you don't have to say that. You just say, I didn't see a thing, meaning you didn't see anything. Right? That's very normal. Right? A very normal thing. Right? And so obviously here, as Imam Shafi said, مَا مِنْ عَامٍ إِلَّا وَقَدْ خُصِّص. Whenever we make a general statement, hardly do you make a general statement except that it's qualified by something. So obviously, unless there's intercession that is valid, with the Prophet making intercessions, etc. But otherwise, here is somebody who died in clear rejection of the truth. Who's going to intercede for him? Nobody. Okay, well, I think that's undiplomatic, or I think that's against disbelievers' rights. Too bad. There's no intercession on that day. Right? So here we see, and the beginning is about something that's august and terrible, but the rest of it is basically saying any, the word any. Right? This is just kind of a normal thing. So a rule in translation, anyway, when reading Arabic, is we have to add the word any into English with the indefinite word if it's in the context of negation. I didn't see a man, I didn't see any man. Or prohibition, don't talk to a man, I don't talk to any man. Right? Or a condition, if a man comes, i.e. if any man comes. Right? Or a question, did you see a man, i.e. if any man came. Right? And so this is a part, and this is something we study in usul al-fiqh, right? Then the whole discussion of, is something general or is it not? When can you label, when can you add the word all into a verse of the Quran or a hadith? When does it actually mean all? When does it not mean all? Right? It's a huge discussion in usul al-fiqh. Right? So I remember, subhanAllah, I tried to study Hanafi usul al-fiqh once, and alhamdulillah, as my teacher said, Hanafis are like women, you will never understand them. Right? Jazakumullah khair. Right? Like he was angry, he's like, why are you trying? Right? Alhamdulillah, may Allah, so therefore Hanafis are also like women in that you can't live without them. Right? Alhamdulillah, right? So anybody who says they don't take a single position with Hanafi school, try and prove it. Right? Alhamdulillah. So anyway, so I had before we took the course, we had to do an exam. You have to do an exam in Nahu, in Arabic, in fiqh, and in Baqarah. Right? So you study, you want to understand the Quran and Sunnah. Fine. If you want to understand the Quran and Sunnah, study usul al-fiqh, so you have the tools in order to understand the Quran and Sunnah. If you want to do usul al-fiqh, you better know your Nahu, you better know your sarf, and know what's going on. Otherwise, what's the point, right? You're completely lost. Or it could be for a specific type, which is very ajib, because we said that indefinite means a. So how can it mean the? How can it mean for a specific type, right? And in reality, and this is something that's quite observable. I mentioned this before, again, when my teacher said this. He said, if you understood Shakespeare well, you'll understand the Quran well. Because there are a lot of rhetorical points that are not specific to Arabic. There are a lot of these things where they're the same. They're the same in reality, right? And so if somebody who studied, for example, English language, they'll be like, yeah, I'm familiar with that, right? I remember I was teaching this, mashallah, I think he was a convert, a Hindu convert to Islam. He's doing his PhD in English literature. So he's doing Jahili poetry with me, and he's like, yeah, I understand that. Makes sense. He can do a better commentary than myself because it's human expression, right? Human expression, how to express yourself. So a lot of things are like that. So example in English, so here's an example in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا. There's two ways we could explain this, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I swear that we did give, or we swear that we did give David and Solomon a knowledge, right? Ilman, a knowledge, right? I.e., either a great amount of knowledge, so it's either for ta'zeem, a huge thing which you've already seen, or a very specific type of knowledge, i.e. that they could hear mantiq al-tayyib, that they could speak to animals and speak to birds, etc. So it's either very specific or a tremendous amount of something, right? But it's arguably a specific type of knowledge, right? We say that fihi ishi. There's something about it. There's a specific thing about it. That's what you mean. You don't mean there is a vague thing about it, right? There is something about Harry. I don't know what it is. There is a specific thing about Harry. I don't know what it is, right? So that's not specific to Arabic. But again, when we're reading English or we're reading Arabic, in reality, this is a problem that we're facing, is that language itself is being attacked. Why is it that, for example, I never studied grammar at school? Because grammar is being attacked. Language is being attacked, right? For us, you know, who knows about in 1984, the novel, New Speech, right? We don't want people to understand. We want you to be as dumb as possible, and your vocabulary is as limited as possible. You can only speak if you use Google. You can only write something if you use Grammarly, for example. This is a problem, right? This is a huge problem. And then what happens is the Middle East that does its sujood to the West says, mashallah, everything in the West is fantastic. We can now import every learning system into the East and get away with what the madrasa system where Mufti Taqi Thani would come out. And so there's things that even for us, when we're reading literature, we're reading language, we're using language, we don't even understand even English, let alone Arabic. Because there is a general war on language, general war on thought, right? May Allah protect us all. So it could be one of the two, a specific type or something general, right? In English, there are friends and there are friends, i.e. there are friends of one type and friends of other types. You don't mean there are friends and there are friends. Obviously, there are friends and there are friends. What you mean is there are cars and there are cars. Certain cars are good quality and certain cars are bad qualities. Some friends are good and some friends are bad. As Imam Shafi said, سلام على الدنيا إذا لم يكن بها صديق صدوق صادق وعد منصفا. He said, goodbye world, I don't want to see you anymore. If there isn't on this world صديق, a friend, who is صدوق, who speaks the truth, صادق الوعد, he keeps a promise, منصفا, and gives you a break. If that doesn't exist, I don't want to be here. Right? Imam Shafi seemed to have a lot of problems with his friends, and a lot of his poetry reflects that. So, i.e., there are friends of a certain type and there are friends of another. They are not all the same. So the indefinite means what? Of a certain type. Indefinite can mean a thing of a certain type. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشية عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع. Right? Has the story reached thee of the overwhelming event? Some faces, so that's indefinite, some faces that day will be humiliated, laboring hard and weary, while they enter the blazing fire. Notice here it says the blazing fire. Does it say a blazing fire? Right, I was running out of time, so I just Googled it, right? Jazakumullah khair, Google, right? But it doesn't say the blazing fire. Naran hamia, a blazing fire, some terrible blazing fire that you cannot understand. And while they are given to drink of a boiling hot spring, no food will there be there for them, but a bit of dari', the food they're going to have, which will neither nourish nor satisfy hunger. Some faces on that day will be joyful, pleased with their striving, etc. So the better translation is faces of one group. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there will be one category of faces on that day will be like this. And then He explains it, and they'll be like this. And you're thinking, well, what about the other group? And they're like this. Okay, well, what about the other group? And they're like this, and they're like this, and like this. Other faces of a different group. There's a typo here, my apologies. And other faces of a different group will be like this. Right? So here, faces of this group and faces of that group. It doesn't just say some faces, or either of a specific group or another specific group. Right? And similarly here, we can make that correction here. We said, which will neither nourish nor satisfy hunger, rather, which will neither nourish nor satisfy any hunger at all. So where does the word any come from? Because the fact that it's indefinite and it means not. So whenever time you say no plus a equals any, as you mentioned. But also says min ju'. Min is for istighraqiyya. That min is used not a single type of possible hunger at all will it remove from there. Right? So there is this group and that group. Faces of this group and faces of that group. Not just anything. So what is it? What's the part of the rhetoric there in Surah Al-Ghashiyah is the anticipation. There's a whole list. There are faces of a particular group, and they're like this, and they're like this, and they're like this, and they're like this, and like this. What about the other group? Bang, the other group. Right? And so if it was just some faces, then there's no particular group that I have to compare against. But it means of one group versus of another group. Okay. على أبصارهم غشاوة, and on their. So can we Sheikh Hassan, can you just look at the translation of this as well? وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ, over their eyes there is a seal. Right? So it would be wrong to say there is seal. It doesn't make sense at all. There is seal. You can't translate it as there are seal. Right? Or there is the seal, but there is a seal. Right? What does it mean? I.e. there was a particular type, a very powerful, a very strong seal over their eyes. I.e. of a particular type. Right? Of a particular type. That seals them in a very particular way. وَعَلَى أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ. So can you see if anybody translates it like that? So again, I repeat, what is our job in Arabic is we go through the Quran with a fine-tooth comb every single time there's an indefinite word. Why? The same thing, we're going to see the word and. I remember sitting in a lesson many years ago, and I was told by the teacher, my teacher said, Arabic rhetoric is about the word and no and. I had no idea what on earth is he talking about, what does that mean? But I remember that lesson. Al-balaghatu hiya al-fasl wal-wasl. No idea what that meant. SubhanAllah, go through the Quran, every single time there's an and every time there's a no and, you're going to find ajaib, you're going to find amazing things.
Allah has set a seal on their hearts.
A seal on hearts. Anybody said that otherwise?
Allah has sealed their hearts.
Sealed their hearts.
And Allah has set a seal upon their hearts. Allah has sealed their hearts.
Well, Mufti Taqi, anything there?
He has said Allah has set a seal on their hearts and on their hearing.
He didn't mention, but so it's a seal of a particular type, a particularly very difficult thing to deal with that they won't see the truth. So it can also mean for a particular type. So sometimes it's obvious. For example, ma ja'a rajulun, a man didn't come, I no man came. That's easy. Sometimes it's very subtle. And where is this important when you're going to do ijtihad? So you want to read the Quran and Sunnah, Bismillah, that is your right, your birthright to read the Quran and Sunnah and interact directly with your Lord. That's your birthright. There is no church, there is no clergy that's going to say, don't read the Quran and Sunnah. But if you want to do that, your freedom comes with a price. Freedom comes with a price. So if you want to have that freedom to interpret the Quran and Sunnah by yourself, Bismillah, go ahead. You better have your finger on the pulse and be aware of these things. Is this what's being said, or is that said? So, and sometimes it's very difficult. Okay, any questions or queries? So this was the world of the unknown. So if we summarize the idea that when we say a in English or in Arabic, or some, it means unknown. From that sense of something being unknown, there's all sorts of senses that come out of it. Right? This is what we call in Arabic ilm al-ma'ani, the subtle meanings that are hidden under one little thing. You say the same words, but there's a multitude of different senses that come out of that. Okay? Any questions or queries? Or complaints? Hassan is doing a khatam ho gaya, is that right? Sorry. My broken Urdu. Okay, subhanallah bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. So any questions from online? We have Fahima, Bushra, Layla, Yasmin.